Welcome back to Central Valley Talk. This show is, we call it real estate, business, investment, anything to do with money or your business condition. The market, what's going on in the market? Are they raising interest rates? How's that going to affect you? We invite different experts in on different subjects to educate us on that. Today's expert is Rodney H. Holt from Trans World Business Advisors. And he does a lot of things, by the way, but one is you help people buy a business or sell their business.
That's primarily what a business broker does.
Now, I understand you have a unique background that helped you prepare to do that. You're a CPA?
Yes, CPA, and have personal experience running business, and I grew up in a small business, so.
Now, by the way, you have offices across the state, one in Kingsburg, one in
Modesto.
Modesto, okay. And I'm just thinking, who needs Rod Holt? Who would call you? What's your typical type of customer?
Well, they fall in two classes. Either a buyer of a business, you want to go in and acquire a business for whatever reason, whether you're tired of being employed and you want to own your own business and make your own decisions, or the other one is to sell your business. You need me for either one of those.
And by the way, you're licensed as a real estate broker.
Yes.
So your typical real estate broker might more be in residential or something. This is very specialized.
This is very specialized. I didn't realize it when I was getting into it, but when I tried to find a broker who was doing business brokerage, I couldn't find it.
Couldn't find one.
So the Department of Real Estate allowed me to, because of my CPA experience, to bypass the experience requirement of the sales agent and go right in and get a broker's license.
That's right, yeah. Now, I'm thinking that a lot of people, I want to sell my business. I'm going to call my realtor. I'm not saying anything against realtors, but usually, many times, there's not real estate changing hands.
You find both situations. A lot of times the seller of the business will want to maintain the real estate and lease it to the person who acquires his business.
Right.
So he's got an ongoing monthly income after he sells the business. But there are real estate transactions within.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're buying a business or you want the location, but sometimes the person operating the business doesn't even own the building.
Absolutely.
Now, it seems to me that you go buy a business and it's at a location and you give the seller a couple $100,000 for his business, then the building owner cancels your lease.
Yep.
That would be devastating.
Exactly.
And that's why you want to talk to an expert before you get into that.
Absolutely. So to come back to it, I think you'll find that most fast food chains do not own their real property. They buy it, they develop it, and then they sell it to somebody and and enter into a long-term lease agreement.
And I guess my question is, if you're going to buy a business like that, or even if you're going to be a real estate investor and buy the building that the fast food restaurant is, you want to check that lease.
Absolutely.
Let me restate that. You want an expert who does this kind of thing to check that lease.
Absolutely. The first thing that typically kills a sale of a business, especially on a retail level, is the fact that the lease may not be transferable.
Right.
And so you've got to dig into that lease the very first thing. But even before that, Mike, when you're about ready to sell your business, you got to understand what the process is. And I've mentioned this to you before, but it's very much like painting a house. When you finally put the paint on the house, you've done a whole lot of other work in preparation
all the prep work
before the paint starts going on. And that is, if you're selling the business, then you've got to go through the process of gathering an adequate amount of information so that a potential buyer has enough information to make a decision as to whether he wants that business or not. On the flip side, if you're the buyer, you need to know if you need money or not.
Yeah.
So you need to go out and get pre-qualified for a loan, SBA or whatever, before you step out and try to buy a business. It's difficult to get a business owner to accept your offer if he knows that you're not qualified for a loan at this point.
Right. They don't want to top their business. They don't want to open their books to you, things like that,
Right.
till they know. Now, what do you, I don't know if we could get any kind of example. You're selling a lot of things. You might sell the real estate portion, might be fixtures, might be inventory, might be goodwill. There's a lot of things that need to be packaged up so the buyer knows what he's buying. So the seller is the one who first has to prep with someone like you to figure out what is it you're selling.
So if you look at preparing to sell your business, the probably the initial thing is to have the business valued. And in order to get the business valued, you need to gather financial information. You need to have 2 to 3 years of tax returns. You need to have financial statements on the business, and you need to have some kind of idea of what the inventory is. You need to have a depreciation schedule that lists all the assets. You need to have all of that put in place. Give it to an individual who does business valuations on a professional basis, and that's primarily what he does. And then get it valued. If it value matches up with what you were hoping for, then at that point we're about ready to list it. But even at that point, we want to package the deal. You want to have the business in a package that you can hand a potential buyer when he makes a request for information.
Right.
You don't want to hesitate. People make quick decisions, and if something attracts them, they pursue it. If they don't, right.
So you don't want to start selling your business, list it for sale, and then start putting this together. You want to put it together before you even start. I
Right.
mean, you don't even know what you have. You don't know your value. Like I said, you don't know what you're transferring, what assets,
That's right.
things like that.
So if you get a professional evaluation done, you're going to know what a bank is probably going to lend against. You're going to know what your business is worth from an independent party. And when you do that, you've got a good idea of what the market will stand in paying for the business.
Now, I understand a lot of these can be between family members.
Yep. Yes.
I always think of this as the father is done, the son's working for him, the father needs to retire, wants to retire, and they need some structure in there, analyze the value so the father can get his retirement out of the business.
Interesting question, because you would think that the son would want to take it on, and a lot of times children do not really want to take over the business. That's if you have that situation where the children or offspring want to acquire the business, that's the best way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can work things out. You find yourself as a father and as a business owner somewhat in a clash, because you want to help your son, but you need to help yourself. So but that's the best situation to be in.
Well, it seems like that'd be a good time to bring in someone like you, the neutral party, to help structure the transaction between father and son. You hate to see a family fall apart over quibbling over money and things
Absolutely.
like that. So the father doesn't want to take advantage of the son doesn't want to overpay his father. I mean, it just so.
Yeah.
You'd be a good person to call on that.
Because there's ways of structuring things. I mean, you can do a covenant not to compete. You could do a long-term employment contract with your father and pay him a salary to be in a consulting basis for you, and you get that as an ordinary income deduction as opposed to a capital investment deduction, and so. There's lots
so there's tax reasons for bringing a professional as well, I see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I do remember this famous case back in the 80s and 90s, I think, in Fresno, where the father had an appliance store, and then the son opened junior appliance store, and they were competing against each other
Yep.
because they couldn't get an agreement on the transfer. Yeah.
Exactly.
You come in here, Rod, and I've always got all these questions I save up till you come. Are there points you want to make?
Well, sure, there's points.
Okay.
The thing that you really have to understand is, do you want to sell the business? I mean, and when you sell the business, you got to do something that not only benefits yourself, but it also benefits the buyer. Both of you have to win in this agreement. If you don't both win, everybody loses.
Yeah.
And so, which that means is that you can't overprice your business to where the new buyer can make money at it. And a seller does not get to sell potential. He sells what he's actually done. But there's ways of structuring deals to where you have earn-out agreements, so you would buy all of the personal property in a business, all the inventory, all of that, and then if the buyer says you're overpriced, then possibly there's a way of getting an earn-out agreement whereby if the revenue reaches a certain level and extends beyond that number, the seller gets a percentage of that. So there's lots of ways to structure this. Getting a loan is the biggest issue right now
For the buyer.
For the buyer, and interest rates are high, so it isn't real appealing to the potential buyer to have to pay 8 to 10% interest on an SBA loan, and so you need to have an understanding of what you can truly do, what kind of a net profit the business needs to make so that you can make strokes on your business. So let's kind of look at that. Both the buyer and the seller need to look at the net profit and the net cash flow. Has to do 4 things. First of all, it has to make a living for the person operating the business. So you got to be able to make a living. The second thing is got to be able to pay the tax. Third thing, it's got to be able to pay the principal payments on any loans. And the fourth thing you do out of net profit is expand. And reinvest back into the business.
What's a business that doesn't grow?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's going backwards typically.
That's interesting. I'm glad you said all those 4 things. The guy who buys the business has to be able to make his living there.
You got it.
So, and you can't say, well, I make $100,000 a year, but then you got the tax and the interest and everything. So
right.
You got to have the full package.
Some businesses buy businesses. I mean, a lot of times there's a lot of businesses that buy businesses. So, for example, let's say that you run a packing shed, which is common all around our valley, and the packing shed uses lots of paper products. Well, he may be buying from a local paper distributor, but he says, after looking at this, I could probably form my own paper company and sell to myself and also sell to my friends out of it. So it's an add-on business. It's a platform business.
So you can start their own paper business or buy one in existence.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So who should call you? I guess anybody thinking of selling their business, just thinking about it, I guess it's free to call you, right?
Absolutely.
You're thinking of selling, just call
Right.
Rod and get some of these questions answered. I think one would probably find that they can't answer all these questions themselves. I wouldn't even know where to begin putting together a package to sell my company. And so, but you would know where to begin.
We do. I mean, our company goes after this. We use, well, let me just talk about the structure of how we process things. You come to us and you start asking questions about how do I sell my business, how do I value my business, and we typically say, well, let us look at some financials so we know what we're dealing with you. So once we've looked at financials, then we come to you and we say, okay, in our business, in our franchise, which is out of with Transworld, we have 2 options for you. Number one, we have a minimum fee that we're going to charge. And out of that minimum fee, we're going to do a marketing package, we're going to do a valuation. And you have a choice. You can either pay that fee up front, and we'll do that for you, and then you're under no further obligation to use us, or you can say, hey, I'll sign the listing agreement right now, and we'll go through and we'll do all of that, and that'll get charged when you sell the business.
When you sell the business, yeah.
So we'd like, I mean, most sellers like completed contract, you know, where the guy earning a commission like us gets paid when the business sale occurs.
Well, it seems to me the latter option, I mean, so you give them a marketing package, then they would go market it themselves. You have a network of people buying and selling businesses, so if you listed it, there's a chance, probably a better chance you can find a buyer down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We approach it in several ways, primarily from our own database. We've developed a database of different people who want different types of businesses. So in our database, and our company is known as Hearthstone. We own the franchise with Transworld, and our franchise is from Bakersfield to Sacramento, so it's the full valley. But in our situation, we want to help you determine the value of the business. We want to gather all of the information we can. And I'm just going to say this, a company that has compilation financial statements prepared by their CPA has a step up on anybody that just does an in-house preparation from QuickBooks.
Right, yeah.
Not knocking QuickBooks, but when you look at financial statements and how they relate to each other, and the checks and balances don't add up, you need the CPA who's putting that together. When you have that and you hand it to the potential buyer, there's credibility in your financials.
It's done by the CPA.
Yeah. So it's worth doing. It's worth having that done.
So I want to wrap something up by saying this: is if you have a business, even if you're just thinking of selling, you don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to sell for sure. Just thinking about it. Start talking to someone like Rod, and start learning what you need to do and have prepared. If you're thinking of buying a business, for goodness sakes, talk to someone like Rod, because there's a lot of people who can shuffle numbers around and make things look better.
Right.
You need somebody to protect you who's not done it once, but done it dozens or hundreds and hundreds of times.
Exactly.
Any last thoughts for our viewers?
No matter what the question is, call. Let me think about that one, because there was something that was.
And it's free to call.
Yeah, it's absolutely free to call. We don't charge for anything of that nature. Actually, we welcome calls. We welcome calls from other realtors. I mean, so you mentioned, hey, somebody wants to sell their business. Well, they go to their favorite realtor. Yeah. Well, it's been my personal experience that realtors have the ability to sell, but sometimes they don't have the understanding of how to put the business together.
Yeah.
And
the things you've said today, I never would have thought of those. And I know you just touched the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things you have to do to prepare to sell your business, and so many things you would have to look at before you bought a business. I would want somebody who's done it a bunch of times, like Rod Holt.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is the most impressive issue is being able to hand a potential buyer a brochure that is well prepared, got good pictures in it, discloses a lot of information to the buyer. We use non-disclosure agreements so that the seller is protected in his information, and they're pretty comprehensive. The one I truly like is prepared by the California Association of Realtors, and so you're protected. And so you cannot live in fear when you start to sell your business. You got to give information so a buyer can make his decision.
I guess on that same, I know we're way past time, but it's just fascinating, Rod. I find this all fascinating. I guess also that if you listed your business, if one were to list their business with you, you'd make sure that they were not disclosing their information to a competitor or something, a buyer
Right.
coming, I'm buying, you would protect them from that. And that's
Right.
another important thing, so.
Well, if we're representing you, the seller, we're going to do a little vetting of the buyer.
Right, vetting the buyer.
Okay, you know, we've got a value on a business of $5 million. Can you afford that?
Right,
If you can't afford it, tell me how.
yeah. You don't need that buyer sticking their nose into your client's
Precisely.
business, yeah, if they can't afford it.
Exactly. So then having this nice, we vet the buyer, then we ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Once they do that, then we provide them with information.
With information, very good.
But not until those steps are crossed.
What I love to say about Rod is that it's free to find out. Call him up and have a sit down or have a meeting or whatever. And by the way, we have on the screen your cell phone number. Can you say it? Because I can't see that far.
Yeah, I can see it.
The
The cataract surgery did well. You know.
Okay. The 559-859?
5759. So that's
5759.
me direct.
Yeah, and then there's office number.
The office number is our home office is in Modesto.
Very good. Thank you, Rod.
Okay,
I
thank you,
appreciate you
Mike.
coming and sharing this information. The expert on selling businesses, the expert on buying businesses. Be careful so you're well taken care of. We'll be right back with more Central Valley Talk right after this.